That was Roman Kostarev. Well, let's bring in Marko Gasic. He's an international affairs commentator. Good evening to you, Marko. We saw a defiant Lukashenko today in Minsk in front of his supporters. Do you think he could survive this crisis?
I think he could survive this crisis. Indeed, it depends really what he does and what the other side does. I'd personally suggest to him that he do an election recount, which nobody seems to be calling for, possibly because the opposition would find out what it probably already knows, that it didn't actually win the elections, and possibly because Lukashenko, for his part, might have to see that his 80% was somewhat less. So maybe it doesn't suit either side to actually genuinely recount those elections, but that would really tell us who should be in power, and that could answer the question of whether it should be Lukashenko who survives in power or not.
When you look at all the crowds that have come out against Lukashenko, I mean, they would say, look, just look at the numbers that have come out. It's clear he didn't win the election. I mean, what's the answer to that argument?
I find that the same kind of argument that was used in Ukraine during the Maidan, where you had perhaps tens of thousands in the main square in Ukraine, and you had millions who voted in the opposite direction, but the tens of thousands were more physically visible. And there seems to be an attempt to create the same kind of scenario here with this so-called march for freedom. I mean, for me, the regime change machine has been switched on big time. The button has been pressed, and now it's a question of how much fuel that it can manage to generate inside Belarus itself. Whether the mass of the population who stand to lose from a new world order of botched privatizations and new world oligarchs appearing on the scene will actually trump over perhaps the bored kids of Belarus, who feel it's overdue, and probably rightly so, to have a change, but are quite happy to do it with demonstrations rather than with an election result.
So potentially then, Marko, how do you see this playing out? Because if you've got the opposition saying, look, we want new elections, and the president saying, no, that's not going to happen, where do things go next?
Well, as I say, I don't see why there shouldn't be a recount of the elections with proper observation of that recount, because I think we need to know what really happened. It's not history yet; it only happened a week ago. Let's recount them. That's the basis of a compromise, and it's, at the end of the day, it will validate one side's position or the others, or both to some extent. I expect it would show that Lukashenko did actually win a majority, because there doesn't seem to be an effective opposition until now in terms of a coherent name against him. But that, I think, would be the way to go. But at the moment, we've got a change of tactics on the part of the opposition, and we've seen the hoodlums in the city square have been replaced by the women in white. But all that shows to me is a level of organisation which is quite strong, and that indicates pre-planning, and it indicates to me that we do see, as I say, a bit of a classic regime change operation going on, despite claims to the contrary.
Other analysts I've spoken to, certainly just recently also, they say, from their opinion, it looks very sort of organic, because when you listen to the policies of the opposition, they're not against Russia at all. In fact, some of them are very pro and say we want to continue good relations. And how does that sit with the argument that this could be interference from the West?
Well, I think that it's realistic that the people of Belarus feel hugely connected to the people of brother Russia, as it were, and that's hardly surprising. It would not be an electoral vote winner to do what the Ukrainians did in the western Ukraine in 2014 and throw all sorts of poisoned pellets at Russia, because all that does is polarizes your population and creates internal war. And perhaps at this point, nobody in Belarus wants that, certainly not from the people within Belarus. And as I say, it's not a vote winner to say that you hate the Russians when you are essentially pretty much Russian yourselves. So I'm not surprised that they're saying that they want good relations with Russia. Also, because at the end of the day, as Ukraine found out to its cost, Russia is an energy supplier of enormous importance, and Belarus does not want to follow the kind of the bankruptcy position that Ukraine experienced when it cut off all ties with Russia, and those ended up being cut off energy ties as well. So the Belarusians are realistic in that extent, and they're also honest with themselves. Yes, of course they want good relations with Russia, because that's what they've always had.
OK, Marko, good to talk to you as always. We've run out of time there. That was Marko Gasic, international affairs commentator. Thank you.